You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 236 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden Dale here with Pankaj Bhojwani as always. This week on the pod, we're talking Living Legend. A lot of discourse around Living Legend right now. It is a format that we'll be playing at the World Championships in just a few weeks' time. 4 weeks, basically, at this point. No, 3 weeks now at this point. So, a lot of discussion, a lot of discourse around this format. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it playable? Is it enjoyable? All these things. We'll get into it. Talk about the meta. Talk about what we've seen over the last few weeks. Talk about the decks that are poised to do well. Final ProQuest coming this weekend. What would we potentially play? I mean, I have a Living Legend ProQuest this coming weekend, so we will discuss these things. But first of all, Pankaj, how are you and how are you doing?
I'm good. I flew back to the US of A, so my background is back in my apartment here. Correction on the ProQuest. Isn't ProQuest season all the way until November 9th? I feel like small ProQuest.
It is, but isn't that because of for areas that have? Is that the calling extension thing again? Is that right?
Oh, I'm
get
not
that
fully
wrong.
sure.
Or maybe it's changes
But
in my. Maybe it's my neck of the woods is different because of the calling being here, so it's kind of done after this.
Oh
weekend.
yeah, it could be. But I know there's some people having ProQuest next weekend too, for example, which is the weekend of calling season.
Yes, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. But hence the calling this weekend. Yes, yeah. In fact, I'm just looking at it right now. You are correct.
So anyway, yes.
So 2 weeks.
So my week has been mostly my week has mostly been, I guess, like traveling back here, and some testing with the team. Definitely has been a shift more towards LL testing within the team. CC seems to be getting more and more solved. I mean, we've been talking about it the past 3 weeks already.
Yeah.
Where it started off as maybe a 5-deck format, and then Florian and KO both dropped out. And now there's these 3 best decks sort of playing a little bit of a roulette with each other of who gets to top which week of ProQuest wins, which is super interesting. Right, like we saw the first week Gravy was on top, second week Verdance was on top, and third week now like Syndra's on top.
Yeah.
And for most wins, which is super interesting. They're all playing like musical chairs up there. So CC seems to be getting more and more solved. I think people are basically close to locked on their CC decks unless something drastically changes. And it's been a lot of LL investigation, if you could call it that, but I'll save that for the main topic. What's your week been like?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'd be keen to be playing this World Championship, honestly, because I think it's so easy to be locked right now on a deck, I think, which is not the case for a lot of previous Pro Tours and World Championships. I think a lot of things... So if I use Osaka, last year's World Championships, right, we got the Dash.io Armory deck drop, the week before, or 2 weeks before, whatever it was, but we knew about the card impact 3 weeks before, 4 weeks before. And then you even look to London, right, where it was kind of more of a 2-deck format, so it was a bit of a different dynamic there as well about like, could you play into the 2 decks, or there was no triangle to play into, I guess, so it was harder to, I actually think it was harder to make a deck choice there. Well, it wasn't for me, I would have just snap played Enigma. And then I think for Singapore as well, I think the format was a lot closer in terms of some of the decks that were viable. It ultimately, I think, ended up kind of playing out like a 1 to 2 deck format. I would say a 2 deck format, but yeah, I think this world is quite interesting, and I think quite a bit easier to prepare for, personally.
I'm not sure if easier is the term I would use, but I would echo what we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, where it does feel quite skill expressive. At the same time, it feels quite specialist rewarding, which could perhaps be the same thing.
Well,
but
as long as you're a specialist
like
in one of those 3 decks, yeah, sure.
Well, no, I think you could bring something like
you can.
Dash.io or an Acilio
you could.
and be good in those spots as well because of their unique positions into the top 3.
Yeah, no, I that's true. I do think you can. That's a good point.
I feel like you have more options outside of just the top decks, which I think is, for me, the main differentiating factor from this compared to the previous Tier 4 events. Like, Singapore, to me, felt like you should just be playing Gravy if you know how to play the deck. And London was you should be playing Aurora or Enigma.
So
whereas
people,
this
people
one,
thought
like
that for
Syndra,
London,
Verdance,
though.
Gravy.
People thought that for London. They were like, oh, there's you could play Slippy, you could play Prism, and obviously 2 Prisms did top 8 that event. Like, I think people did think you could play decks outside of the top 2 for London.
That's fair. I feel like that's more true for this one, or more people might echo that for this one.
Choice is just an illusion, Pankaj.
Fair. But I'm with you though. I think this CC meta does seem quite compelling. I think I'm very excited for at least the CC portion of Worlds. It's shaping up to be very dynamic gameplay wise. It feels like there aren't too many extremely polarized matchups.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
there are like firmly 3 top decks, which isn't also very common. Normally we have
2.
1 or 2.
Yeah.
And having 3 up there with other decks around that have unique angles into the 3, and all 3 aren't like super oppressive to the point of just having all these super polarized like 90-10s, for example.
Yeah.
Makes this a very exciting CC format.
I think LSS is going to be very happy with how the CC format is shaping heading into Worlds. I'm not expecting any surprises with this class constructor format, to be honest. I think there's been times, even if we go back to Singapore, even if we go back to London, go back to Osaka, I think it was more likely to see a surprise because the format was narrower. I think when the format has more of that width to it, so 3 top decks, for instance, I think is the best starting place for that because you just know there's going to be more of a split across those 3 decks, as opposed to and in those next sort of group of decks, also you're going to see a split there as well. With you could have, in theory, you could have 3 decks being the top 3 decks being around 45% of the meta, and then the next 5 decks could be 30% of the next 3 decks could be 25% of the meta, something like that. Because that's not out of the question, right? To have kind of a flat sort of distribution or a flatter distribution that we've had in the past. And I think that's exciting in terms of watching. I don't think, and the gameplay, I'm not going to see the deck list. I don't think it'd be like, wow, innovative deck list. I don't think that's necessarily going to be happening. I think there would just be small things, card choices, sideboard plans. I think those players that really put in the time, but also fundamentally understand different ways to attack decks and develop game plans in particular, I think those players are going to be really rewarded in CC. The interesting thing is going to be what happens in Living Legend, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Which comes back to the skill expression, right? It feels like you can actually
100%.
get there on like better preparation this CC format. Coming back to your comment about the width, it feels like the width is more apparent now. Basically, previous times when the top of the meta was more narrow, you are sort of guessing, could there be like an Uzuri level angle into this format, right? Whereas for this one, it doesn't feel like there is one because the top is already firstly 3 decks, so it's harder to find something that beats all 3, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But then also the top isn't as narrow as like Zen Nu was in Amsterdam or Aurora Enigma was in London. So the width is just straight up more apparent from the beginning. So it's less of a dark horse type format, less of a these are top decks, maybe a dark horse comes and upsets things, and more of a there's a wide range of decks to choose from. You can be a specialist and do really well this format. So
yeah, it's clear. Those next group of decks are really clear. There's not in the past it's been like, could this be viable? Could it not? It's like, no, it's Dash.io, it's Acilio, it's potentially KO. I think we're going to see some of
KO in there.
Yeah, and you could maybe put Prism in there. I think that's Kano maybe. That's kind of the extent of it, I think. But
I agree.
It's true. It's true. It is. It's going to be interesting. I think meta predictions, which we will obviously get to in a couple weeks' time, are going to be very interesting in terms of meta share. And I think might have to do our homework and do a bit of number crunching to see if who can get the more accurate prediction by percentage points. Or I think, to be honest, it's going to be a very close one. My week in Flesh and Blood, Pankaj, has been good. I've been playing a decent amount, playing most evenings or most days, getting in some games, which has been nice to do. Kind of preparation for, so actually not playing all the time. Sometimes we've been watching, doing a bit of research to prep for calling Sydney next weekend, where I'll be in the booth. So making sure I'm across some of the decks that I haven't had as much experience playing, but I think are still relevant in this format. And of course, the last calling before we get to the World Championships in Philadelphia as well. So just trying to get myself across that, but also playing in preparation for my last 2 pro quests. Hopefully just 1 pro quest this weekend. I didn't get, as I said in the pod last week, wasn't playing last weekend because I had a good friend's wedding on Saturday, and there were no pro quests on the Sunday. So this is kind of my last, I guess, bite of the apple before I have to, of course, consider using a PTI for Yokohama, which I'm not sad about. But yeah, I got a Living Legend on Saturday, and then potentially a Class Constructed on Sunday. So they have also been trying to verse myself in Living Legend, of course, for the pod this week, and it's kind of coincided nicely.
I'm very curious to hear what you'll be playing in LL. Although I think I can guess, but let's save it for the main topic.
Sure.
And you can reveal to us then if you have decided. I assume you have, and I have a guess, but I'll bring it up then. I want to talk a little bit.
I do need to sleeve something up tonight, so I've basically decided, I think.
I want to talk a little bit about the preparation for this World Championships compared to previous ones. Something that I've perhaps noticed, I'm still very early on, and I'm curious to get the team's perspective on this, probably post-Worlds. But I almost wonder whether because it's two constructed formats, it's CC and LL, do you feel like it's been easier to prep? That's what it's been feeling like for me. It's not easier to get people together, or like to just jam games of LL in between games of CC or vice versa. Whereas in the past, it used to be a lot more, can everyone make this time so we can get a draft going together? Or you might need to, draft with like random people instead of drafting with just teammates, and that can potentially dilute or pollute some of the results if you're trying to test something specific. It's felt like we've been able to execute on our testing goals a little bit more easily. We've been like, we want to test this matchup specifically in L, this matchup specifically in CC, and things like that, which to me has felt like the testing process has felt smoother overall. I don't know what your takes are on this.
I mean, logistically, it's easier, to your point, right? Getting drafts together is hard, and especially when, like, let's be honest, more people prefer constructed formats in this game than limited. So, and even at the highest level, so often people just have less motivation to want to do these limited. They're just like, I'd rather focus on constructed, or their threshold of where they feel they're at a level of preparedness seems to be lower for limited. But whether that's actually true or not, that's what is reflected. And then just the logistical nightmare of organizing gamers to get around a friggin' table, honestly, or around the virtual table even at some points. So I think logistically it's easier. I think in terms of when it comes down to the actual nuts and bolts of it, is it easier to prepare? I don't necessarily think so, because I think you can actually playtest limited very similarly to how you playtest constructed. You can build up approximations or a good sort of average versions of draft decks, and you can playtest with them, and you can learn a lot about game plans, format, flow of the format, different interactions, kind of how each of the heroes should play into each other. And that's how I've learned the most about limited over my Pro Tour testing. And the times where I've really dedicated to that process has been my best limited results, to be honest, when I've taken that same approach. So I don't know if I necessarily agree. The other thing I'd say is that Living Legend is also a format where there's a lot more to discover. I think on the surface level, and we'll get into the discourse, it's two classes. I won't even talk about heroes. It's two classes or three classes that are viable, and the format's just the power is so concentrated into certain cards and classes that it's so solved and all this kind of stuff. But I just don't think that's true. Like, I think that there's so many cards, the card pool's so wide, the heroes are so wide that just can't be true. So I think in theory, and honestly probably in practice, that Living Legend is a lot harder to prepare for than... Now, I will flip that. If it was maybe Living Legend had been in the focus in the ecosystem of competitive Flesh and Blood for longer, like we had maybe 2 or 3 callings, maybe even had Living Legend as a solo Pro Tour previously, a lot more to go off, I think. But fresh ban lists as well. Like, I just don't think that's the case. There's always going to be angles, and I think we'll talk about that. So I kind of reflect back to Blitz for the first World Championships, and I think that was so much harder than preparing for limited in that format. One, that limited format was, I guess, already used for a previous Pro Tour, but I just think that it keeps being iterative, because it's the same as classic constructed times. This classic constructed format, it feels a lot easier to prepare for than I know you kind of disagree because the width and stuff, but I think it's clearer in terms of this format. There's a lot more no-wins than in previous formats. There's a lot less surprises I think you have to prepare for, but that wasn't the case for Blitz when you prepared for the first World Championships. It was like, right, seems like Icelander, Prism, Chain, good decks, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually Ultim might be viable, like the Dash might be, there was all these things, and I actually think that it was so difficult to prepare for that. And I think what we're going to end up with is people coalescing to a lot of just the same kind of decisions and results for Living Legend, and I think that's more of an outcome of time and risk and knowledge than it is of actually the format just being easier to prepare for. So that was very long-winded, but yeah.
That's a very fair point, actually, the comment about there's a lot more fresh ground that needs to be uncovered in LL, which maybe people haven't quite gotten to yet. For example, like Lexi, for example. I know a lot of people have written her off. I personally am not too convinced.
I wouldn't be.
But who knows? Like maybe there's some weird Lexi build out there which people just need to try. Or an Azalea, for example. I know some Azalea diehards.
That one that one I can see less
quite a bit. Yeah, that I want to see less of. And then Zen, for example, I think people are writing him off very early for some reason. But Zen, I think, is still very real. And I'm going to contest your comment about it's a 2-class format. It's a 1-class plus 1 hero format. Like, sure, Guardian's not a class that's fine, in LL. Fine. It's just Starvo. And then a bunch of...
I was trying to basically say it's not a 5-hero format, or 4-hero format, rather, by saying it's a 2-class format. But yeah, what I mean is it's Runeblade plus Guardian, except it's Runeblade plus Starvo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. So with that, let's move on to the news. There was the 6th anniversary birthday stream that happened this past Sunday. If you haven't tuned into that, definitely go check out the VOD. Lots of interesting announcements there. We're going to go over some of the important ones, which is Silver Age seems to be getting a very large amount of attention from the devs and from LSS in general. They have touted it as the fast, fun, and friendly on the wallet way to the $2 million World Tour, which is very interesting. It almost seems like they were alluding to it. They didn't confirm this, but it seemed there were very strong implications that we might see Silver Age at one of the tier 4 events next year. That's my prediction, at least, having zero inside information. But I could totally see one of the Pro Tours or maybe even Worlds next year having Silver Age as part of it, especially given their tagline about how this is the $20 ticket to the $2 million World Tour.
Well, I kind of read that as next ProQuest season is definitely going to have Silver Age. That's kind of how I read that. Pro Tour, I mean, the thing is, we don't know. What we don't know right now is what is the fate of Limited in Flesh and Blood. The biggest event of the year, the World Championships, does not feature Limited this year, and that's a huge statement. Whether LSS intended to be or not, it is, and we're now all waiting. I mean, as far as I was updated last, we don't have confirmed formats for Yokohama, right? So
I don't think we do.
So we just don't know. But I would say, go and check out the birthday stream, or at least flick through it and look at the Silver Age stuff. A lot of effort put into this, a lot of thought. I wouldn't say a lot of time because it feels like it's come around pretty quickly, but very clear this is the successor to Blitz, as they're kind of spoken to. It's a lot of things going in behind this. I think it's very clear that we're going to see this minimum. I would expect ProQuest, the next ProQuest season, so ProQuest for PT2 of next year to have Silver Age involved, and then I would expect a calling, if not 2 callings in the first half of next year, and then I wouldn't be surprised if it's PT2 or World Championships, to your point, that has Silver Age involved with it. Maybe similar to this year, but instead of Living Legend having Silver Age.
I mean, there has to be some callings. Otherwise, a tagline $20 ticket to the $2 million World Tour makes no sense, right? It can't just be Battle Hard.
But I'm saying I think there'll be 2 in the first half of next year, is what I'm saying. I think it'll happen early.
I could see it. I think that one of the tier 4s next year is going to have it. That's my prediction. And I'm a fan of that. One big reason I'm a fan of perhaps not having every tier 4 event feature Limited, obviously, like more so than just because, I'm not too big of a fan of Limited in general, but because I think it lets them be more liberal / leverage more design space for the sets, for the sets themselves. Like Super Slam, for example, is not something that perhaps, like Super Slam's Limited isn't very great, right, for Premier, like high level, for example, but they can take that risk, or they can go leverage that design space because it's not going to be featured at a tier 4 event. Whereas if they're beholden to every tier 4 event needing to have Limited, then they can't take little risks or maybe stray into unexplored design space when it comes to the sets, right? Because they need to be like, oh, this needs to work for Limited. And that inherently cripples them in some ways because they can't, for example, do... Okay, I don't want to say can't, obviously, because they can figure out ways around this. But for example, if I think of a pure arcane damage set, I imagine Limited would be very difficult for that sort of paradigm without it just devolving into fatigue or devolving into like deterministic endgames because people don't have AB, for example. But if they're like, oh, this Pro Tour 2 next year is not going to have limited, so the set that comes before it can be a little bit more different, a little bit more unique in that it doesn't need to support limited. I think that could be, I think that's an exciting new way forward for the game. More so than obviously just having more formats on the Tier 4 events.
Yeah, I think, we did away with supplemental sets, right? Which, for many reasons makes sense. So, those of course were one aspect of a set that wasn't limited based, but they weren't introducing newness. They were introducing new cards, but it's not the same as a base set where you're like, here's a whole new concept potentially. You're not going to introduce a whole new concept in supplemental sets. So I think this approach, honestly, I actually, as much as it pains me, like I massively agree with you. I think it's, as much as I want more limited in this game, I think this is the right approach. Like if that is the approach that gets taken of, right, one set per year is the limited set. That's where that's where they put the time, right? That's where they put the effort. Then that is probably going to generate the best result of, we don't put limited dev time into 2 of the sets for the year. We only put it into this one, which means we can produce a better limited product and a better limited gameplay experience. Then yeah, that is awesome. To be honest, that is probably the way forward and probably the right decision. I hope that is minimum the case. I hope that it's not that we just lose limited at the highest levels in this game, and as a format that is supported, because that would honestly, to me, that'd be devastating. So I hope that is the steps that we take. But yeah, I'd love us to go PT1 next year. It's class constructed and Silver Age, or maybe not because we don't have the qualifiers by then. But it's like it's all class constructed. Let's go back to PT1. It's all class constructed. Like,
back to New Jersey, baby.
Yeah, I think that will make people happy, and I'm here for it. But then I also want something back on the other side where I want PT2 to be limited, or I want Worlds to feature limited if that's when the set lines up, right? But I think what they can't do is they can't go to 3 format events. It's the continuity, even just from a coverage perspective as well. I don't like that aspect. It's too confusing, too convoluted. I think it's too much for players. And they're players playing at the highest level. They should be able to adapt to 3 events. But it's just like it's not worth it. Like it's just I don't like it. It's not the preparation time that people have to put in. You don't get the best out of players' preparation. You don't get players showing up in the best way. Players who do have more time to dedicate get another incremental advantage. Like I don't like it. So 2 formats, give me some limited at some point. Can be less than it has been previously. Silver Age, I'm excited. Let's see what happens.
I agree with you on the triple format thing. I don't think that is the way forward. But yeah, with this one, with having, say, one Tier 4 event have LL plus CC, the other one having Silver Age plus CC, and another one having Limited plus CC, it just feels like they can take more liberties with their sets instead of needing all of them to be really good draft formats on top of introducing new concepts into CC. Like, I don't think it's very reasonable to do something cool and weird and fun, like a no weapons limited format, if that's also going to be featured at the World Championships. Yeah. So I'm a fan of that. Speaking of the next set, by the way, they dropped some important news regarding that. Next set, the world premiere, is going to be in London. I don't think they dropped the date, but if we could go by like Hunted being roughly like January, we can imagine that the next world premiere is going to be in January in like London, Jan or Feb, for example. I don't remember exactly when Hunted came out, but yeah. Do you have any plans to come out to London, Hunted? Hayden?
Hunted. That's me. I'm the Hunted. No, yeah. I don't. I mean, would love to, right? If the opportunity,
it's limited.
Yes, I would actually love to work to be in the booth for another world premiere, because and you know this now, I think they are the most fun, honestly. So I would love to have the privilege of doing another one of those. London's probably not necessarily on the, I mean, we've just found out, right? So I need to think about it, but I probably don't have any plans to come out if I was playing, unfortunately. But what I would say about timing is the other announcement we got is Road to Nationals happening January 3rd to February 1st. So that's very early this year for Road to Nationals. But my assumption then is that the world premiere in London would probably be the weekend after that. So I guess the first full weekend of February.
Yeah, I don't think a world premiere has ever clashed with
I can't imagine it would.
PQ season. I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, with the number of events that are coming up, they keep adding more and more events. At some point, stuff is going to have to clash, right? Like we're having callings.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, we're having callings and battle hardens now that are across PQ season, for example. So at some point, we have a world premiere that's across an RTN season or PQ season. I think that just could totally happen. But yeah, RTNs are a little bit earlier than usual next year, which is interesting. I wonder if they're gonna maybe shift around the national dates as well next year, because there was some gripes this year, right, regarding product release and national season, especially the
and
US
how
nationals
close it is to the Pro Tour as well.
Exactly. So maybe they're messing around with that as well. We didn't get full dates on the rest of the World Tour season next year, just the RTN's one. But yeah, it's going to be earlier. We also got a bunch of new promos and Reinar cards. Hayden, do you have thoughts on the OG Brute stuff?
I mean, dude, I am not going to be at Worlds, but someone has to get me this Golfing Reinar and Romping Cloud. I need this in my life. I gotta have it. So I'm gonna have to find someone to pick that up for me, because I definitely need this. Really interesting to see these new cards come out that beat chess and have like chessless perks almost. They synergize with beating chess because you no longer have chest armor. It's kind of cool. Are they good? I don't know. I mean, I think they're potentially really good. The common and rare ones are potentially really good in Silver Age, honestly, because of the chest equipment that you play in that format. Are they good in CC? Not sure yet, but it's cool, and I'm glad to see a few more cards. I'm super excited for the Reinar Armory deck, but yeah, just sort of, I guess, TBC at the moment.
That was a great point about the Silver Age. I think something they mentioned too on the stream was that the next set in particular is going to have a bunch of support for Silver Age, and that's something we can be looking forward towards as well for like future sets. So now sets are going to be supporting, well, CC, Silver Age, and potentially Limited as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they juggle all that. But I think they hinted at a bunch of common and rare equipment, right, for Silver Age coming up in the next set, which will be super interesting. A new Calling Champion card, which this past year it was Stonewall Gauntlets for winning a Calling. You get a gold for Stonewall Gauntlets. That's the only way you can pick that card up. It's going to change with... Is it with the World Championships or is it the start of next year? I don't remember exactly when this change is happening, but shifting to quick dodge flexes, and they've added a whole new treatment to it. It's not just gold foil, it's a Marvel gold foil, which looks really, really cool.
That says Calling Champion on it.
Yeah, it says Calling Champion on it, and I think that's a massive step up. And Quick Dodge Flex is also a much more playable card than Stonewall Gauntlet. Stonewall Gauntlet is also quite playable, but Quick Dodge is, I think, a step above, and the new art treatment on it makes it really, really cool.
Yeah, and some cool people got to reveal Quick Dodge Flexes, which also, it's so weird. Like, 2 of Arsenal Pass's preview cards have been Calling Champion cards.
Yeah,
kind of.
I still have a lot of regrets. Still have a lot of regrets over our Quick Dodge Flexes reveal and how we both somehow completely missed that you could use it again on the same turn.
Yeah,
which is like, okay. That was rough on our side. Anyway, World Championships coming up really, really soon in about 3 weeks. Hayden, unfortunately, cannot make it, but I'm sure you'll be glued to the screen.
I will be. Certainly. Listening to all my friends talk about the game and cast it. I'm super excited. As I say, I'm looking forward to watching particularly this Class Constructor format. Maybe Living Legend will decide at the end of this podcast, I reckon.
Yeah, you'll be tuned into your friends playing the game as well, a bunch of them. And next weekend we have the Sydney Calling, which you'll be casting, and the Tacoma Battle Hardened. And you correct myself from last week. I got a few comments regarding that.
Seattle.
I kept calling it the Seattle Battle Hardened, and people were upset. The Tacoma Battle Hardened. That's happening next weekend.
I'll enrage them further. Same thing. Right, with the news, let's get on to the Commander Cookout. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. You can drop them in the YouTube comments below. Like the question that we have today comes from a listener doing exactly that. You can drop them in our Spotify. If you'd like to drop into the Spotify comments, you can email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. If you're an Arsenal Pass patron, you can drop into the Discord, send us a DM, or if you see us next weekend at the 2 events that we will each be at respectively, drop us a note. Give us a handwritten note or a printed note, whatever you want to do, full name on it, and your question, and make sure we can read it, please. This question comes from Sean Fancher, 1870 on YouTube. Commander Cookout question for you here, but by my count, it's been almost 2 years since the Guardian class has held a truly meta-relevant position. Worlds at Barcelona being what I would call the last major event in which a Guardian was seen a near top deck even though that might be stretching it. But I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure the Wolfpack played Bravo at that event from memory, which is an interesting decision. Today, even after the release of over 100 new Guardian cards in just the past 3 months between Mastery Pack Guardian and Super Slam, the class still struggles to meaningfully compete with its best performance in Jarl and Victor seeing fringe success at a handful of ProQuest at best. In your opinion, what all happened in the last 2 years to cause the class to fall so far from grace, and what kind of expansion slot or cards or other tools could LSS give it to address some of its current shortcomings? The first thing I do want to add, Pankaj, is I think there has been events where Victor has been viable, but I agree it's never been a top deck, but I think it's had a meta-relevant position at times, maybe not to the extent of, an Ultim prior, but yeah, what are your thoughts here, Pankaj?
Yeah, I'll push back a bit on the 2 years since Guardian was seen as a near top deck. I think the last time it was actually heavy hitter season, where Victor was, I think, a very playable and one of the meta contenders.
It had relevancy.
Which is still about 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just slightly under 2 years, like 1 year and like, I don't know, 8 or 9 months. Still close enough.
Yeah.
To me, my biggest question with the Guardian class is I have no idea what their niche is anymore. It used to be that they are like the disruptive deck, but Assassin does that better now. Like they used to be like disruption plus like evasion, right? Like dominate, for example. And I got Valda is kind of still in that niche where she wants to disrupt and she has evasion. But Assassin just does that better. And then the mid-range and grindy value is just done better by the Earth heroes. Like, you tell me you want to play Guardian, I'm just like, why aren't you just playing Florian instead if you're trying to do the mid-range, grind you out type thing? So they're being outclassed on that front as well. And it seems like they're maybe somewhat doing both, right? Like, the Earth heroes aren't very disruptive, and Assassin isn't super mid-range grindy, right? They're more... They're trying to attack you on a disruption / like aggro front almost, if you look like Slippy and Marinette. So maybe Guardian's niche, if you could call it that, is being somewhere in the middle of those two. But it just feels like you should be focused more on one of those two aspects rather than trying to be in the middle, because then you're just jack of all trades and you're not winning any of those races. And at the same time, they can never deal with board state ever. And something that we've had the past 2 years was Enigma into a short few months where there was no board state deck and Florian was king of mid-range at the point, so Florian was winning all those. And then Gravy comes out, and Guardian just cannot deal with those type of strategies ever. As well as Wizards, they can't really deal with... All the Wizards also have some sort of combo game plan, right? Verdance has healing potions, and Icelander had Frost Hexes and stuff, and Kano obviously has potions. So they can't deal with those strategies ever either. And we've kind of always had one of those strategies be prominent, or one of the best things to be doing in the game. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason why you can't really play Guardian. I guess maybe with the release of Mastery Pack, it seems like maybe they're trying to carve out a niche for Guardians as like mill / fatigue. Maybe that's going to be their unique niche, which no other class gets to do as well as them. But it's not good enough yet. And yeah, so I would say that's my biggest thing that's happened the past 2 years that has caused the class to fall from grace, to address the question, which is they've lost their niche. Assassins got massive upgrades and are now the disruptive class. Mid-range and grindiness is being done by other classes better, and there's always been a board state deck. So I would say all those in combination has left Guardian just by the wayside.
Let me ask you a question. If Ultim was legal in this format, as you know, in the same configurations or with the same card access that it had back in the day, would it be a top tier deck?
This format?
Yeah. Or any of the last two formats?
This format, I'm like Gravy and Verdance being around. I don't think Oldham beats that. I guess maybe Gravy definitely not, I think. But I guess Verdance maybe with the Warhorn plan, like the way they tried to beat Icelander, right? They would like Warhorn away like the hexes and the chills. Like you can like Warhorn away the healing potions or something, right? I just don't think. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to be fast enough, especially with trees back in. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna hazard and say probably not. But I don't know. Crown of Seeds is obviously a heck of a card. So
yeah,
I'm gonna guess no, but of course the Oldham had a very wide pool.
It did.
And could do
Different things.
like could build slightly differently.
Yeah.
Like there was the whole Frostfang Pommel thing at some point, right?
Yep.
For Oldham. So I'm gonna guess no, but it could definitely be a surprise. What do you think? Do you think Oldham could perform this meta?
I think probably. I don't necessarily think it would be top 3, but it might be an interesting spot in the meta. I think it would clearly be good against Syndra. I think you could probably make yourself good against Verdance. I agree. I don't know about the gravy piece, but I mean, we did see Oldham be able to build to at least combat board state decks at certain times in its life. But what I would say,
I mean, specifically Dromai because of Phantasm, though. It
was
was never
Prism as well.
When could Oldham ever beat Prism?
You could build to try and be a deck to beat Prism. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying I think you had an angle of attack to be somewhere in the 40% range. I think people were trying to do that in New Jersey at PT1, I think. But I guess what the reason I asked the question, the point that I kind of want to make is that I think the reason that where Guardian has fallen off is that I think each Guardian hero that currently is legal and class constructed is so requiring of what has to be in your deck. It is so based around, in a way, synergies, but also not just synergies. It actually, you have to play you just have to play really specific cards. Like if I use Victor for an example, right? Like the identity of Victor and its hero ability requires you to build quite specifically. You need to play into gold. You need to play into clash elements for the hero. Otherwise, you're just playing in a vanilla Guardian in some ways. I think Bravo is just not powerful enough in terms of its hero ability. You look at Jarl, again, you're so specific in the way that you have to build Jarl to get the most out of the hero ability. So I think, it's the same I think these new Guardians are similar in some ways. I think that the challenge with Guardian is that the heroes are not inherently powerful enough, and then also have a lot of restrictions to how you have to build them. So they're in this position where the meta just has to be so specific for them to actually realize their ceiling, because it's such a narrower ceiling because of the way that they have to be built. So that's basically in a nutshell what I think is wrong with Guardian.
I agree with the second part of it, which is the cards just aren't good enough. The specificity part of it, I'm not so sure I agree. Like every top deck has specific cards it has to play. Gravy has to play a bunch of these blues and a bunch of allies. Verdance has to play earth cards, except when they have these specific cards they have to play, they're actually good cards.
Well, but they get away with it. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like they get it. Good. They get it. Like their cards, the synergy that's involved with them is good. Like that's just not the case for the Guardian. So like and you don't get to leverage their hero ability in any different way. So they're just not well positioned. Like it ends up being Gravy is inherently powerful, right? It has an inherently powerful hero ability. It has inherently powerful cards that start on the board. Syndra has the same, right? It has inherently powerful hero ability. The Guardians don't have that, so they're so required for the format to be so specifically tailored towards them to actually be relevant. So
yeah, I struggle to think of a format that a Guardian is going to excel at, because like I was saying earlier,
other heroes will do
like
better.
They don't even have a niche. Yeah, they don't have a niche anymore. Yeah. Like I guess maybe a pure ninja format. I think that is the one place where Guardian still excels at compared to the other classes, where I think they have the best ninja matchup. Like you tell me Syndra, like what beats Syndra the most? It's Victor, right? So you play, if it's like mono Syndra, okay, you play Victor. That's its niche. It's just, I don't know how we're gonna get there. I suppose maybe a mono aggro format. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think. Specifically to this question, so I don't think cards or expansion slots are the things to fix it. Unfortunately, I think they could. So that they could print a number of cards that are so powerful that they can start to just become so inherently powerful with these cards that they can overcome their shortcomings to that point. But they've printed cards that are specific to matchups that in theory should target and combat certain things that they have to deal with. But again, the problem is even when you print those cards, they have to play all these other cards to make the hero function, that they just don't work the same. So for instance, I'll use an example, right? Use something like Warmonger's Diplomacy in a deck like Syndra. It's so easy to add in. You have so many other powerful cards around it. You're like, I can do this, I draw it, it blocks 3, it pitches for my daggers, it helps me cast this stuff. you put in a card like Warmonger's Diplomacy in Guardian, and you draw it on a turn you're not going to play it. It's like, doesn't cost 3. It isn't. You already have these other blues that you're competing with that don't do anything. It's like, it just takes away so much from your deck. So, yeah, I can't see it right now.
Yeah. It doesn't reveal to you Rouse the Ancients.
Yep.
If you
That's what I mean. That's kind of what I'm saying about the synergy of stuff.
It loses your clash.
Yep.
It like to put it on top. It's not an element card for like a Jarl.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying about the synergy of these decks. They're so requiring of the synergy that have to be within your decks. And yes, for instance, Syndra has that, right? Like, you have to have so many Draconic cards. But that's also just their damage. It's not their resource base. So whereas like both Jarl and Victor, like these cards are their resource base. So you're so locked into the blues that you have to play, things like this. So it just has all these different restrictions that, yes, other heroes have some of these restrictions, but they don't have all of these restrictions. And Guardian does.
I think the big thing is that the restrictions don't allow them to play powerful cards. I guess it's like where it comes down to. Like, you have Earth hero restrictions, you have to play Earth and Decompose cards, except those Decompose cards are freaking Felling of the Crown and Plow Under. So they're like good cards. Yeah. Whereas Jarl, it's like his restrictions that you have to play ice cards if you want to have leverage on his hero ability. Mm-hmm. Or you have to play these armor destroying cards, but then those cards are like Mangle and like Winter's Bite, which is like, Winter's Bite is a good card, sure. But then it's like these block 2s. If you want to play it,
there's a block 2. It doesn't let you play cards like Rouse the Ancients, for instance, which is one of the most powerful things you can do in Guardian. It doesn't synergize with the other parts of Guardian that are powerful. So it just
and those cards aren't strong enough on their own to actually overcome the like the restrictions of it, like to your point. And like Victor has to play these clash cards, but then you also want to play Visit the Goldbane Estate, and then that loses you your clash. And you can't run too many of the clash cards. You can't run Test of Iron Grip and Trounce and Test of Strength, because then you're losing your own clashes. So it's these restrictions, and restrictions aren't good enough on their own. Whereas stuff like Felling of the Crown or stuff like Rigor Mortis and stuff like Chum are good enough on their own that the restrictions are worth it.
But yes. But also, they do all the things that you need them to do. Their restriction only is one restriction, not 3 restrictions like so many of the Guardian cards are. Anyway, we have to get on to the main topic. We have to talk Living Legend, or we're never going to finish this podcast.
Let's go.
Let's get to the main topic. And I guess, just quickly, we spoke about Class Constructed. I just want to quickly break down the results from ProQuest this weekend, because we are going to talk Living Legend, ProQuest, and event that happened over this past weekend, which I can't really call Battle Hardened because it was smaller than most ProQuests. But Classic Constructed wins last weekend. Syndra went to the top with 30 wins, Verdance with 23, Gravy with 17. And then our 3 decks that we'll talk about in that next group, I guess to an extent, maybe it's 4 or 5 decks. KO 12 wins, Dash AO 11, Prism 6 wins, Kasaya 6 wins, Acilio 6 wins, your friend Victor at 5, Kano, etc. A lot of 4 wins in there. I think the most relevant thing is, for the 3rd week in a row, one of the big 3 have come out on top, and for 3 weeks in a row, bar last week, all 3 heroes have been the top 3 decks, except for Gravy had a bit of a blip last week, but it returns to the number 3 slot. And to me, honestly, this is the order of proceedings heading into at least calling Sydney this coming weekend, but also potentially the World Championships, with it being the order Syndra, Verdance, Gravy. And for me, there's no change to last week, because there's a bunch of decks sitting on the fringe that are somewhat playable, and a lot of them are good into either Gravy or Verdance, but not necessarily into Syndra, with the exception of Dash.io. That's kind of where I sit right now.
Well, KO as well is good. Oh, wait, no, sorry, no.
KO's not good in Syndra.
My bad. Yes. It is Dash.io is the only like Syndra counter, the only Syndra predator. So I'm with you. I think Syndra is on top. And I think, you're right. This top 3, what we have this week with Syndra, Verdance, Gravy, is the ordering I would put them in as well, for power level within those top 3. Mm-hmm. But they're close enough that they're still firmly the S tier decks, if you will. Also, I don't know why Victor is my friend. I don't know where that came from you. I've never advocated for this hero. I've never played this hero. So I'm just going to let that slide. Gravy, Verdance, and Syndra are playing like musical chairs for like the topmost winning decks. Yeah. And I think I'm going to reiterate what I said last week, which is Gravy being out of the top 3 last week was, I think, just an anomaly, which obviously can happen when you're playing with percentages, right? Like sometimes you will hit that lower percentage of Gravy wins, even though he's still firmly in the top 3. And I think this 3 cements himself back into that position. KO continues to be solid, which is Yep, which is interesting. I
we don't have to
guess
get
we
into it.
did know that. we expected him to fall off from like the top 5, if you will, into like solidly the tier below. But he's still in just the tier just below. So very playable. Still like strong when the variance goes his way, and you can play him into all 3 of the top decks. Like I would say he's like slightly negative into all 3 of the top 3, but he can totally still blow people out with like massive blood rushes. One thing that I will point out, Florian has finally dropped off all the way to the bottom of the pie chart with 3 wins this past weekend, which I think is his spot.
It's not good into
that's
any of the top 3.
Exactly, which the same can be said about KO, except I think Florian is way more negative into Verdance and way more negative into Gravy than KO is. Right, KO, if you tell me KO wins against like a Verdance, I'm like, oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's like a 40% matchup, whereas Florence is like Florian rather is like a 20% matchup.
Yeah, it's like the sequence of draws for Florian needs to be like CMH into like back-to-back like 3 wide turns or something, which is just not really going to happen that often. Whereas KO, sometimes you're just gonna draw your blood rushes, your wild rides are gonna hit perfectly, and then you're gonna reckless stampede and blow people out.
I'll put it this way.
Florian finally. Yeah.
I'll put it this way. You're Florian. You finish up round 1 and the World Championships. You lose to a KO. You go, man, that KO drew well. My draw's not that great. It happens. It's like a matchup that's good, but it's not that favored. You lose to a Florian in round 1. You come over to your friends and you're like, I have the biggest bad beat story of all time. I can't believe I'm 0-1 down. That game was ridiculous. There you go.
Yeah. So Florian, bottom of the pie chart where he belongs. Aside from that, rest of this pie chart seems fairly expected. I think Dash.io, Prism, Kasai, Acilio, KO all being in that sort of like the lower tier.
Yeah.
The top 3, but still very, very playable. Again, just sets us up for a very exciting CC format coming to World Championships.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it next 2 weeks, I think, because we'll talk about the reasons to play these heroes. I think I would like to get really detailed into why you would choose these heroes, and it's going to come down to the expected metagame in terms of the share of these top 3 decks. So we will get into all that, but we have to talk Living Legend because we have to at least do 10 or 15 minutes on this format, as much as it feels like we're trying to avoid talking about it. We had 3 Pro Quests this past weekend, so there's some data there, I guess. We had a Battle Hardened, which was the size of a small Pro Quest. It was like 30-something players in Houston. So we can talk a little bit about this format. And to be fair, we will probably talk about this format again before the World Championships because it's going to be in our World Championship preview, for instance. So we might not get all into it this week on the pod. But I guess the important thing that I want to cover is... My first question for you is... There's a lot of discourse around this format. There's a lot of people saying it's not a good format, it's not an enjoyable format, it's so narrow, it's solved already. And I guess I just want your thoughts on this, Pankaj, because to me, from where I'm sitting, there's been basically no events, there's not many Pro Quests, there was a Battle Hardened that was tiny over the weekend, so I don't know what you can take from these things. People are obviously not having maybe the greatest time testing, but that's not uncommon to constructive formats in terms of they feel it's very hard to find things. It's very hard to uncover gems and to find a thread that you pull on that ends up being successful when there is established strong decks in the format. So I don't know, just what are your thoughts on the discourse right now and this format?
So real quick, this past weekend, the Battle Hardened in Houston, you know what it reminded me of? You remember that
Calling Dallas
Lexi Pro Quest season? Yes, Calling Dallas, the Lexi Pro Quest season, where there was a calling in Dallas, which historically has always had massive callings. But that weekend,
well, Pankaj, it's the biggest city in the
calling
world.
they've ever had.
I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, It's. I mean, I've heard it's bigger than Texas, which is wild. So that calling had such a bad turnout.
70 people or something? 80 people? Was it 120? Maybe it was 120.
It was just tiny compared to what Dallas normally gets. And it was in the middle of like Lexi season where it was like 6 months of like Lexi dominance and everyone was just upset with the CC meta. It's kind of what this feels like, except I don't know if enough exploration has happened in LL for people to be that measurable about the LL format. For me, it's not about... Like, my take on this is not exactly the format itself being measurable, which, you know, I think some people can say it is. I think there is potentially more things to explore. Just potentially, although it does feel like there are very clear top players. Mm-hmm. For me, my biggest issue is that it feels like the format is okay. Stale isn't the correct term here because of how new it effectively is. But what I'm getting at is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of organic churn within the LL metagame. What I mean is, new sets come out and they don't support LL, right? They can't. When a new set comes out and if it supports LL, it's going to be like beyond MST level power. So that doesn't happen. Nothing rotates out of LL. There's no living legend system within the LL format. Just Starvo's not rotating out. So that just leaves a metagame where nothing moves, it feels like, unless LSS comes in and bans things. Like, Ira isn't playable anymore because they banned needles. And it's not organic. It's something that came from outside. And to me, the format feels very, you are allowed to play what Big Brother tells you are allowed to play. Like, they came in and decided, you aren't allowed to play Ira anymore. And then now you're stuck here being like, I guess I can play Ira. I can't play Ira anymore until they come in and change something again. Because nothing is going to naturally change in this format. Because no support is coming in and nothing's rotating out in an organic fashion. It's all just through bans. And to me, that is my biggest detractor for the format. Where it just feels contrived, or I don't know if contrived or artificial or stale are the correct terms. But I hope I'm able to articulate what I'm getting at. Where it feels like they tell you what to play, kind of. Like Oldhim, for example.
Yeah.
Like Oldhim, you cannot play Oldhim because they decided
ban Crown Seeds.
They're going to ban Crown Seeds to fix Starvo, which they had to fix Starvo because the guy was
broken,
dictating the format.
Yeah.
But in the process, they're like, you can't play Oldhim, and you're just supposed to live with that. Like you know, like things like that. Like that's what I mean.
Yep. No, I fully understand what you mean, and this is the danger of a ban list in a format like this, right? But also, to your point, it's also not the danger, but it's just the result of having all these heroes and these powerful heroes that have hit Living Legend, that at some point there will be new heroes that come into this, and they will be the heroes that get some support, either because they're a classic constructed relevant hero still now, or they share a class or a talent with a hero that is potentially already Living Legend, but is kind of on the cusp of being cracking into this format. For instance, I'll use an example. I think Dromai is actually fairly solid in Living Legend. I think it's a potential playable deck. Wouldn't be surprised to see it at the World Championships. But if they print another couple of cards that draconic cards that end up splashing well into Dromai, all of a sudden it's like, it's on, game on, right? Like that's how their support's going to come. But I think that's not going to be happening very often, just because.
Yeah, and I think it's still very limited to these heroes that have very strong hero abilities.
Yeah, I agree,
right?
For sure.
Like when a new Guardian card comes out, or like a new like Elemental card comes out, you're like instantly you put it into Starvo, and there's nothing else that's going to play it better than Starvo does. New Runeblade cards come out, and it's like, okay, you just jam it in your Viscera or your Chain because they have these really good hero abilities. I guess maybe Briar. And you just jam it, and you don't like look into anything else, for example. And I guess Dromai with the weapon and also has strong hero abilities, so you can put her there. But yeah.
Okay, so I guess one thing I want to just riff off of that before we talk about current format decks that are being played, just to kind of really solidify where this format sits 3 weeks out from the World Championships. And again, we will talk more about this, but we want to give a little bit of an overview right now. The thing I want to point out is I think there's still a turn that could come in this format, because the format has effectively boiled down to a bit of a repeat over the last couple of weeks of the decks that are doing well. So there's that's metagames, right? They solidify. There's a very clear theme happening here in terms of Starvo, Chain, Viscera being the top 3 decks, right? Runeblade and Starvo, effectively, because we're also seeing some Briar. The turn that can come before we get to World Championships is a very narrow format leads to an exploitable format. Often. I'm not saying always, often.
That's right. Uzuri winning the LL portion of Worlds. Let's go.
Sure. I mean, Uzuri winning in Amsterdam, right? Like there is angles that arrive when you have just two.
I get what you're saying.
Players.
Yes, I do agree what you're saying.
So I think that, and I'm not saying I have the answer or I know what it could be, or I'm not even going to necessarily speculate. I mean, we can do speculation if you want, but I think it probably starts with illusionist personally. But what I'm saying is that there is still a turn that could come, and we could get to the Living Legend portion of Worlds, and it's like, that's 20% Starvo, it's 25% Viscera. Viscera seems to be the sort of most popular deck right now. It's 20% Chain. So 55% of the format is these top 3 decks. And then it's like, there's X, and there's Y, and there's a team that's shown up on this because they have an angle into the top 2 decks. and they're hoping to dodge the Briars of the world, or the team that's shown up with Dromai, the team that's shown up with Prism is trying to dodge that team or whatever. And I think that could be really friggin' interesting. This format is still really young, is one thing I want to say, and we've had some ban list updates, and I just think there's more to come from this format. I can't say I personally particularly enjoy playing it right now, but that's also because I'm not testing for this format. I'm not trying to discover what decks I could be playing and how I could have an angle in this format. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of, I guess, we sort of introed with the question about the discourse, and then I just wanted to give my perspective on some of the maybe things that are missing in the discourse right now.
I fully agree. I think there's a lot more exploration to be done, and to me, I don't think the, answer to the current narrow format is starts with Illusionist. I have 3 heroes I want to put forward as potential contenders that can go ahead and disrupt this current paradigm that we have, which I do agree with you. It does feel like Starvo, and in my opinion, it's Starvo and Viserai at the top.
Yeah.
With let's start with what I think is the best deck in format. I think Viserai is just the best deck in format right now.
Yeah, me too.
It's just anything you want to play, it needs to first ask the question: do you have a decent-ish Viserai matchup? If you don't, you need to be good into literally everything else, to say you want to play into this format, because I think a lot of eyes on Viserai right now, just because of how flexible he is. I mean, we saw it happen in CC as well, right? He asks people just questions that are inherently opposed, because he can just take a turn where he sets up 10 rune chants and asks you to convert your full hand. At the same time, he asks you to block well, because his offensive output is just very, very strong, especially on a moderate Titan, for example. And then he has this Skeletor combo game plan too, which he can sort of just do in the middle of turn sometimes, where he's just moderate something, Revel, or a Skeletor Sonata in the middle of my turn, and you're like, wait, what? And then just draw 4 more cards. So I think he's just best deck in format. And then Starvo can, I guess, play. I would give Viserai the edge in the matchup personally, but Starvo is still Starvo, and then Chain is around as well. Any thoughts on that before we move on into potential contenders?
I think just before you go into contenders, that's what the metagame is showing us as well. 3 Pro Quests last weekend. I guess 3 Pro Quests is so small, but 2 wins for... is it 2 wins for... Sorry, I had it up before and I've just lost it. 2 wins for Starvo, 1 win for Briar. Yeah, which I do think Briar is hanging around there. It's just super aggressive, right? 2 wins for Starvo. And then Viserai was the most played at the Battle Hardened. Again, it was 32-player Battle Hardened, so take this with a grain of salt. But it was the most played deck, and it was the deck that won, and was, I think, half of the top 8, or between that and Chain, it was half the top 8. So yeah, I think I agree, and just anecdotally from watching games and playing a little bit, I do think Viserai and Starvo and Chain are definitely the top 3 decks. So what do you want to speculate in terms of what might be viable, and what people might be looking at for World Championships around all these teams and playtesting?
Well, so if we're starting with Viserai being best deck in format, if that's where we're jumping off, if that's our premise, I mean, I think Zen is the first thing you should look at as a potential playable. I think Zen has a solid Viserai matchup. I would say he's favored into Viserai. And he has that thing, right, which he had in CC as well, when the Starvo stumbles one turn, which does happen quite a bit, actually. I've seen so many Starvo hands which are just 3 mopey ice cards, there's a Frozen to Death in there, and then maybe a Blue Fruits or something, and then not a lightning card, something else, and then they kind of just don't do much. Or even if they just send a raw Spinal at you, Zen's cool, here's my 7 block on Fridge, and then now you die. Sorry, not 7, 5, or whatever, right? Because they run Stubby Hammers instead of Shuko, and then you just die. So he still has the explosiveness to combat anything that's trying to disrupt him, and then he's naturally has a good Viserai matchup. So I think Zen is looking to be a potential dark horse, is probably too strong of a term, but a potential contender.
I can see it. I think the banning of Zephyr Needle hurts that Viserai matchup. Honestly, I think that is very true. But I mean, I haven't played that matchup. If I had to guess, I do think Viserai is so powerful. I think it might be Zen favored, but I can't imagine it's by much.
Well, the 3 Warmongers also helps a lot in that matchup, is the thing.
Does it?
Viserai is often... Yeah, because Viserai is often caught in that position against Zen, where you want to hold your hand to send something back at them, but if you just end with the Warmongers, you get hosed. And if you block too much, you're kind of just bleeding out. And if you set up into them, well, they can just make a Zen state on you and then have 2 turns where you just cannot pop off. So it just feels like the Viscerai needs to play a lot of guessing games and a lot of, I hope they don't end this turn with the Warmongers, because if they do, I'm hosed. And it feels like Viscerai's constantly on that spot. Oh, they're going to be like, oh, I have this turn, we have like a Mordred Revel. I hope they don't have natural chi or double chi in their hand to like just stuff my entire turn. Viscerai keeps needing to play into these points of variance on the Zen side, and Zen just feels like he like has the tools.
Yeah. I have found that sometimes it's like, you just, I guess from playing Viscerai, of like, I can understand the Zen state thing, but then it's just going to be sometimes where it's like, oh, no chi in the first 2 turns, or no chi on the second turn when I've just popping off for 50 damage here. Unlucky for you. Like, I think that, and there's just so many times where Viscerai's like, okay, yeah, sure, you're able to Zen state here. That's great. I'm going to present some damage. I'm going to force you into a Zen state here, and then I'm going to back up and build these rune chants and then hopefully just kill you. But Zen also has some really good friggin' damage, so I can see it.
Yeah, the games I've seen Viscerai win are exactly what you're talking about, where the Vis popped off on turn 2 and the Zen didn't find a chi yet. Those are the games I see Viscerai win, but I mean, I would put that solidly in Zen's favor, because any other game that goes past like turn 2 or 3, I just feel like it just feels like Zen just asks too many tough questions. I'm
dubious, but I also think I'm putting a lot of weight on the matchup and just Zen in general being hurt by losing Zephyr Needles, personally. I also,
Yeah, but so Zen lost Needles, but in that matchup specifically, they gained 2 more Warmongers, which is big.
Yep. Fair. Yeah. I think the Starvo piece as well comes into it for me.
Yes. Yeah. Zen has a worse Starvo matchup than Viscerai does, for sure.
Cool. All right, what's next?
Wait, should we move over to you first? You said Illusionist, so let's
I think Prism, man. I think Prism's got to be something worth exploring, personally, because of Starvo and Viscerai. I think that's why. Prism was like, so I think back to Scalata being legal and Starvo being the best deck in format, and Prism was the 3rd deck in that meta. I'm not saying it was, equal with those 2, but I think it was viable, and I think it had angles into that meta. I don't know. I think Prism,
interesting,
and Prism's has new cards, so.
I feel like Prism's unfavored into both of those matchups, but maybe
I'm not sure.
Something.
I think it's close enough that, and things have changed so much that I think it's worth exploring. I'm not saying Prism's good into those matchups. What I'm saying is, I'm not here to say what's good in this format. I don't know. What I'm here to say is, I would be surprised if teams are not exploring Prism.
Mm-hmm. To me, Dromai feels like the more playable Illusionist compared to Prism, because I think Dromai actually has a good Starvo matchup, whereas Prism's Starvo matchup is, in my opinion, kind of dubious. But they both still struggle into Viscerai, it feels like. And it just goes back to if you're playing a deck that is negative into Viscerai, like, what's your... Like, you have to be very convincing everywhere else, and I'm just not sure whether they are.
I think potentially Prism has a much better matchup into Runeblade than Dromai does, and has not much worse. Like, might even be able to be like 45, 50 into Starvo. In which case, it's like,
okay,
you should look into this, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. So was Prism the only Illusionist, or did you also want to touch on Dromai?
No.
Okay. Also, by the way, when you say Prism, you do mean OG Prism, right? Not new Prism. Because I know some people were exploring freaking new Prism with old Luminaris.
No, I've heard. I've literally played that deck. I think it's whatever. I think it's old Prism.
It's fine. Yeah. My next contender is Dash.io, actually, which obviously got hurt a little bit by the Warmongers, but it does feel like, I guess, I mean, it's similar to Viscerai too. Sometimes you Warmongers a Viscerai and they just call peace and they set up 10 rune chants on you and say go. Dash.io is like similar, where sometimes you Warmongers them and they're like, okay, cool, here's 4 boost cards, and then you're like, but like, here's 3 or 4 boost cards into an XP. You have to really time your Warmongers to like, it feels like Warmongers is only like, it's going to be good when they already have a processor on the field. Otherwise, your Warmongers, you're just flipping a coin into them. But Dash.io is so incredibly explosive. There's a whole system reset thing, which I'm not sure has been explored to its full extent yet. I feel like Sam Sutherland's kind of like the only one who's like probably like fully explored like the extent of what that can do, and potentially like perfected, is actually iterating on proper ratios and everything for that version. But yeah, Dash.io to me feels like a potential contender. Dash also has some interesting tools for Viscerai, like Dissolution Sphere comes to mind, which back in CC, I remember OG Dash tried to play that into Viscera, and it wasn't good because Viscera just waits out your Dissolution Sphere and then kills you.
I think it was alright
but
in
Dash
some,
IO
in some midders. I think it was alright. Like in some midders, in some builds of Dash. I think I played that during ProQuest season. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, but Dash IO, unlike Dash IE, can actually kind of do like the Zen thing, right? Where it's like if Viscera just cannot attack you for 2 turns, you kill them. Like Dash IE had the problem where you weren't killing the Viscera fast enough, but Dash IO potentially can kill the Viscera fast enough with a Dissolution Sphere backup. Unlike Zen, though, they can't make it at instant speed, so so if you pass to the Viscera and you don't have a Dissolution Sphere, you can just get blown up. Whereas Viscera still takes a risk into Zen. They might just have natural double chi, for example. But yeah. So Dash IO to me is another solid contender, just from sheer power level.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think what the question people are going to come down to if they find an angle with Dash IO is, does it have the consistency to be a better option than just playing Viscera or Chain? I think it's going to be the problem they come to. So we'll see. Maybe the answer is yes, and if so, that's cool. That's exciting.
Could be. Yeah, and I think that's one aspect of a lot of explanation you spend, and a lot of like skillful play. That Dash IO, the system reset version, is a very difficult deck to play. Yeah. It needs lots of reps and lots of iteration to potentially find it. But I think that could be a potential gold mine. And then my last contender is a disruptive deck. It actually is Assassin. I know I joked about Uzuri.
I knew it was
but it's not Uzuri. It's actually New. I actually do think New has an angle. I think New is favored into Starvo, like solidly favored into Starvo.
Okay, yeah.
It's very hard to actually have a hero ability in that matchup from the Starvo side, because
makes sense.
Also, Siren's Call wrecks you. Like one mask activation typically wrecks you, and Starvo doesn't have the sideboard space to side out all of the powerful blues. When I say powerful blues, I mean a whole bunch of 4 and 5 power blues, right? Like New will just take that. Sometimes you're forced to run like Winter's Bite into the New, and then they just get to like Winter's Bite you as well. Like there's a whole bunch of playable blues. On the Starvo side, that New has this good end game, and on the way there is disrupting you, so that you can't really fuse against them. So
how are you beating Viscera?
There, then the question is, yeah, exactly. So that is a question that New has to answer, and there could potentially be a build of New that I think can play into Viscera.
Mark New is back.
No, not quite. No, I don't think you're playing Mark New in this format.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think you do have to be on the damage. You have to be on the damage leaning New. It needs to be a New closer to what she was when Zen was at full power in CC, which was you play Scale Peeler into Zen and you try and kill them, as opposed to the New that came about when Aurora was top deck in CC, where New was trying to fatigue everything. Like New was running 6 to 9 D reacts and like trying to fatigue everything and just play for mask New with them endgame. Yeah, I don't think that version of New works in LL. But
can't see how it would.
It'll be closer to the first version where you're actually trying to kill your aggro opponents and you're trying to disrupt them out of the game. I feel like that version of New needs to be explored. Okay. And you have to see whether you can actually solve this right, because you have a naturally good matchup in Starvo. Yeah,
I mean, I can't personally think of an angle into Viscera. But maybe, if people can find it, then it's exciting. I might imagine what happens is they land at you, to your point, have to be as aggressive as possible, and then Viscera is still beating you most of the time by just being like, well, I'll just block and stack and then I'll kill you. But maybe not. We'll see.
True. Yep.
Anything else you want to touch on in Living Legend that you think is worth talking about at this point in time? I think like I said, we're going to come back to this. We're going to come back to what we think the metagame is going to be in Living Legend. It's the most unknown aspect of the World Championships right now, but there's still a couple of weeks of ProQuest to go, so there's a few more things we'll learn before then.
I'm holding out hope that someone can maybe crack Lexi.
That'd be cool.
Just because I think Child of Bleak Expanse is a very strong card in this format.
Yeah.
I do love the card. I think in this format it is very, very strong.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Right? The problem is that it turns off your own 3 of a kind.
Yep.
Like to me, that's just the biggest problem with that card.
It's the same thing in Starvo, right? It's like, oh, this card should be good in Starvo. Oh wait, it turns off my hero ability. Never mind.
Yeah, exactly. Except obviously Lexi's hero ability doesn't matter. But like for Channel Bleak Expanse, and Lexi just conceptually, when I like zoom out and look at an aggressive leaning deck that has disruption, like strong disruption, right? Flipping over like red Arcane Incarceration and then sending arrows at your opponent just puts them in such a tough spot. They don't block, you incarcerate them.
Yep.
They do block, you just leave it face up.
Yep. One of my
It's
favorite plays.
Exactly. It just feels like, in theory, this deck has the output and the disruption. So I'm hoping someone cracks it.
That'd be cool.
I currently haven't seen a build of Lexi that's convincing. At least that's not consistent enough as well, because that's the other aspect of it, right? It feels like she's almost Runeblade-esque, where you want these element cards that's a disruption, but then you want these arrows, you want codexes and 3 of a kinds that can all just clunk together weirdly sometimes. Doesn't really have a lot of armor to really make up for that either, so not too sure, but yeah, that's I'm holding out hope on that.
Cool. All right, well, as I said, we'll talk more about Living Legend in the preview for the World Championships. Keen to dive more into, not sure what we'll talk about in the pod next week in terms of main topic, whether we might go a little bit of gap week and then dive back into Classic Constructed and what we anticipate for the World Championships. Get ready for our preview pod. I think there's this angle in Classic Constructed I really want to dive into about the meta game and what that means. I think there's a real possibility that it's the correct decision to not play one of these top 3 decks. But it really comes down to if you can. I think you have to perfectly nail almost the metagame, and that is very difficult. So, plus also, of course, always get the gem pairings, but that shouldn't factor into your decision. But yeah, I think I'd love to talk more about that. We'll talk more about Living Legend. That's kind of it for this week, though. I think, Pankaj.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And when you say gap week next week, you mean we can just take a week to talk about something just
we might
outside of just
we might do a
meta
fundamentals
predictions
pod or something. Yeah. We'll you'll see it.
Yeah. Maybe it's a bit more of a fun topic. If people have suggestions, please feel free to leave it in the comments.
Always.
But yeah, and then we can come back to like CC and LL metagame proper the week after.
Yeah, we'll know more
because we'll have Calling Sydney to look at as well.
100%. Well, that's kind of what I mean. Yeah, we have a calling next weekend. We have ProQuest season ongoing, so we'll have more info. We'll just have more to go off as we head to the week of plus discourse and just like what we're hearing out there and all those things. So yeah. Until then, though, that has been episode 236 of Arsenal Pass, and until next week, we'll see you in the next episode.